Amy. Okay, so for today, we're going to spend about 30 minutes going through an introduction to user experience, and hopefully all of you will come away with a good understanding of how to think about this as a career option. And when we talk about user experience, we're thinking about our users and how are they interacting with technology. And it could be how that physical world really comes together with the digital world as well. And as user experience professionals, there's activities that we do to research who we're designing this experience for. So first we need to define like who's our audience, like who are we designing for, and then understand them more. So we'll do research to understand their needs, and we'll bring together a team cross-functionally, like product design, product management, development. We'll work together to go through activities that help us really stay focused on our users and what their needs are. And our design deliverables really help us do the right planning and solutioning to help think through different interactions and different contexts to prototype designs that can help us like really move through smoothly as we go through development and continue to test and learn with our users. A lot of user experience got initial buy-in, showing the value of what we can offer to our customers and consumers, and have expanded into employee-facing experiences and how we can make them more productive and efficient. And then we'll talk a little bit about user experience as general practitioners, and then also specialties within user experience that can kind of blend different interests that you may have. And then we're going to wrap up with some Q&A, give you a chance to ask us some questions about potential careers and user experience. So we thought it'd be good to talk through an example of the Nintendo Switch. When you think of the Nintendo Switch, there's a lot of really careful planning that went into who is going to use this, anything from young children to adults. And as we think through like the buttons and the controls and the extensibility of it, a lot of planning went into that to make it a very easy, delightful experience, as well as when you think about the user interface itself. It's very visual based. So it like here you're seeing an example that's actually in Japanese, but with it being such a visual emphasis with the icons and images, the idea is that anyone could pick it up very quickly and learn that interface. So our goal is to make experiences very memorable, that once you kind of learn it with a very short learning curve, that you can kind of come back and use it again and again very intuitively without having to think about it. So next we wanted to talk a little bit about how user experience can help create feelings and perceptions. So when you think like within a Switch, there's different types of games you can play. Animal Crossing as an example can make someone feel very relaxed. And then if you have a video game that's more like on the violent side, like Postal Redo here, it can make someone feel very intense. And when you think about Nintendo Switch, the reason that this is here as a news headline is, does it really fit the audience of Nintendo Switch? And that's where like research can come into play to see like, is this even like really the right thing to build for our audience? So we think about like really those feelings and perceptions that the overall experience with the technology, and then these more like finite experiences like games can create with our end users. And then also with the Nintendo Switch, another great way to think about it is that context of how people are using it. So Nintendo Switch was really planned well as a game console that can be very extensible in different ways. You can be using it in the backseat of a car during a road trip, or you can be playing a sushi game while you're eating sushi in a restaurant and sharing your control with a friend. Or you can hook it up to a TV and share it with a group of people. When we think about user experience for that, thinking about the ergonomics or like how those buttons and controls interact in these different situations, as well as how the screen expands, and how can we add more detail when it's on a TV screen and it's standing big. Really being able to plan through those different experiences is something that like a user experience professional would help lead with the team. And you can think about this with a website too, like we want it to work on an app, we want it to work on a mobile web or tablet or website. So there's a lot of different ways that user experience can kind of apply the context and the device that's being used to really plan that experience and maximize delight for our users. So in summary for this section, we just wanted to, when we're talking about user experience, a user interface is what we plan for of how that user is going to interact with it directly. It's based on accomplishments. We want our users to be able to be engaged and accomplish their goals, make them more productive and come away with good positive feelings about their interactions. We want to plan for the different contexts that they may be using that experience in. And even thinking about the different audiences and how, like, even when you're playing the same game, if you're playing with your mom, they may have like a different perspective than what you do playing your favorite game and sharing that with her. So we want to think about like different people and how they may come away with different experiences. So I'll now turn it over to Amy. She's going to talk a little bit more about the details of what designers do.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so most of the time when we talk about UX designers or product designers, we're talking about people who create digital products or things in the digital space, but it can go far beyond that or can lead to designing lots of other things outside of the digital realm. So of course, in that realm, though, we do have things like the apps on your iPhone, Microsoft Word, could be your iCloud mail app, or even an online shopping site like Amazon. But then it also extends into fuller experiences, like customer experiences, what it's like to go buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks, or even to use a self-checkout at Target. You know, there may be signs to help you find your way around an airport or the mall, or the experience of attending a music festival, for instance, which could include everything from the stage layout all the way to the ticket that you've got on your phone to get in. And then finally, there, is also the world of physical product design, which, could be the packaging for a new phone and, the experience of unboxing that, or the way that your microwave works or your Nintendo Switch. So how designers actually go about doing this, there, is a pretty extensive process. And there are a lot of different ways to do it, and they can vary from company to company, from individual designer to designer. But there are some core things that are a key part of the process. And the first being research and analysis. And when we talk about research, we're talking about understanding the user, interviewing users, for instance, could extend to competitor research, looking at how other products that might be similar to what you're designing behave and how they function. And then discovery is about kind of understanding our business goals, the problems that users might be facing. And then we get into the creation phase, where we are potentially sketching at the beginning and then building on that to come up with just different ways to solve a particular problem that our users are facing. And then when we get farther into the design phase, we're starting to develop more fully fleshed out designs with lots more detail. And we might bring these designs to life through things that we call wireframes or mock-ups and prototypes, where we're still in the design phase, but you might actually be able to have a target user actually interact with your design and click around, for instance, if it's in the digital space. And then finally, we need to validate that design. We need to make sure that we're hitting the right mark with our intended audience or users, and deliver that into and launch the product, essentially. Next, please. So user research is really a key part of the process, and it actually is involved at all the different phases of a development life cycle. And the reason why it matters so much is that, without it, we as designers can make really big assumptions about what our users want or what they need. We could base it on our own internal needs, for instance, and not really take into account all the variation between individuals and their needs and wants. And when we have a product that we have not tested, we have not delved into with the actual intended users of that product, we run the risk of bringing something to market that just really misses the mark rather. Let's say that I design a website for users to design their own t-shirts, for instance, but I don't observe a user actually go through the steps of uploading an image or creating a design on that website. And the risk there is that this website launches and some aspect of these key tasks might be unclear to the audience, might even potentially be causing errors. And so when users come to visit the site and can't get through those essential user flows, then they quickly are turned off, with the experience. They get frustrated. They can't use it effectively, and probably they're not ever going to come back and try again, or they might leave bad reviews, which is also going to have an impact on other people who might potentially want to use the product. Next, please. And usability, or rather user research and lack of it, can have pretty major consequences. So you might remember back in 2018, there was quite a big incident that occurred in Hawaii. There was a message, an emergency alert that went out across the islands, alerting people that there was a missile threat inbound and to seek immediate shelter. And this threat or this message was not detected and corrected by anyone because it was actually a mistake for a full 38 minutes. Next, please. And what the investigation revealed after the incident was that there had been basically insufficient management controls put into place. They also cited poor computer software design and human factors for the incident. And basically all of those are kind of the areas that go into, making a well-designed and usable interface. And as you can see here, this is a screen from the system that they were using, that there just is really not great organization. There aren't strong visual cues. Even the switch between all caps on certain lines or links to sentence case on other lines just makes for more difficulty in quickly reading. Next, please. And then to make matters worse, there was no automated way to actually send out a message very quickly alerting people to this, the fact that this was a false alarm. The agency had to go about manually correcting the problem and getting that word out, which was time consuming. And really, all of these issues could have been prevented had the designers and the team of developers created these simple use cases and tested those with people. They could have been more aware of the potential for something as catastrophic as this to happen. Next, please. So I mentioned, user research is just a really key component of the process, and it occurs throughout development lifecycle. And research really begins before a project even begins. And some of the terms that you would learn if you were to study user research, or you were to undertake more training in the area, are terms like contextual inquiry, which is really all about watching a user in the environment where they're performing the tasks that that you're interested in learning about, that you want to problem solve for. And it also involves ethnographic research, the type of research that actually stems from the field of anthropology, and it involves the researcher immersing themselves in a subject or an environment. And then research also occurs throughout the design process. We talk a lot in the field about iterative testing, and what that means is designing and then testing that design, and based on the results of those tests, modifying that design, and then retesting again, and doing that over and over until in increments, until you get to the design that is right for your users. And prototyping involves actually starting to build in some of those interactions that'll be in the final piece, so that you can test those with your users and understand where things aren't working, and what things are actually working well. And then prior to the product release, you can get into more fine tuning. And here we employ techniques such as user acceptance testing or usability testing, where we're really delving in to see where users are having a hard time with a more fully fleshed out prototype, or getting close to the actual finished product. And then really a design is never really finished, because even after you release a product and people are using it, you still want to be testing, you still want to be checking for errors, checking for parts of the experience that just aren't working for people. So it's kind of a never ending, in the best case scenario, it's a never ending process. Next. So really, the key thing that I want to convey is that any idea can be tested, and you don't necessarily need to have expensive or complex design software to build out prototypes or designs to test an idea. Even simple like paper and pen, as long as you can visualize or convey the idea that you have in your mind, you can grab somebody, test it, and start refining and iterating on your designs until you reach that perfect point where you've hit the sweet spot for your users. So now I'm going to turn things over to Keith, and he is going to talk more about just the roles and areas involved in it.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so I'm going to transition into starting to come up with some things that we may want to talk about in the Q&A, right? So I'll raise some issues or some things that may be of interest to give us some things that we may want to talk about and tap into some of the other folks here on the call. So right, so in a perfect world, right, we can design these great experiences and everything goes hunky-dory. Unfortunately, most of us work for companies and we have managers, right? So we won't dive into this too much, but if you're really interested, I'm sure all of the practitioners on the call could share some stories. So this is one from Dilbert that actually hits home a little bit too closely, right? This is Phil, our new vice president of marginally legal activities. He'll be leading the effort to make our user interfaces so confusing that people have to pay us for training. We already do that unintentionally, sure, but we can't always rely on luck, right? So again, Dilbert, I've never been in a case exactly like this, but there have been lots of times when somebody on the business side says like, yeah, we made that pretty easy to use, but maybe it's too easy to use, right? Or we have some other conflicting goals. I've been fortunate never been asked to like design something that I thought was unethical, where we're actually like tricking people into like renewing a subscription for 5 more years, even though they don't want the service anymore. But lots of my colleagues have, right? So we could talk about, how does user experience actually work within these environments. But let's talk a little bit more about what it takes. How do you get to be a user experience person, right? How do you have a career? So if you've studied like a civil engineer or mechanical engineer, right, there's a lot of professions that are much more regulated. When I did my research, there's like, wow, that's like pretty hard to become, a civil engineer to help build bridges, right? You have to get an engineering degree that's from a licensed program. You can't just go to any Joe Bob's, engineering school around there. You actually have to have 4 years of qualifying training as sort of like a junior one before you can then take a test to pass and everything, right? So if you're going to be an engineer and building bridges, there's a lot of steps to go through, right? If you want to be a massage therapist, it's easier, but there's still some things where you actually have to get a diploma from a school that's been certified to teach massage therapy, and you have to pass an exam and you have to pay the state of Ohio some money, right? So in user experience, we don't have as many of those hurdles, right? So that can be a good thing because it makes it open to lots of folks, but it also makes it harder to figure out how to get into the field and harder to like explain to somebody, like, if you want to be a civil engineer, I can tell you that, the 8 years of your life that you're going to have to devote to get to be a civil engineer. For a user experience person, there's lots of different paths. So some of the paths that are common, and again, we can talk about some of these paths during the Q&A, and we can get into some of the details. Certainly, a lot of folks go through a higher education path. In Ohio, I'm not aware of an undergraduate degree in user experience per se, but you can get a technology degree or design degree that would be a great start. You might be able to get a job as a user experience person. A lot of folks, their first job might be more as a software developer, and then they realize they like the user experience side more. Or you might be a graphic designer, and then as you do more and more digital things, you start to like, hey, I want to actually do the user research and not be the designer. Some folks, definitely there's a lot of learning on the job, even if you get some degrees, and there's master's degrees, and you could even get a PhD in some of these related things if you really want to dive into it. A lot of folks, though, don't take the higher education route. They do more skill-based training. They might take a boot camp, or there's lots of courses that you're willing to learn, and you could get some certificates from those. And again, you can often those folks get their first job as a generalist at a company. It's like the company's just learning it, but you could also get a job at a larger company that has 30 user experience people, and you're just sort of the junior person on the team, and you can be mentored by the other 30 folks. A lot of it is self-taught, even if you're going through the other things. We're also always talking about like what books can we build, what new skills can we learn. A lot of folks like do volunteer projects, like, you could do a volunteer project with your church or something and do user research for your church. They normally wouldn't do that for their website, for the church website, but you can practice some of these things. And we'll see in the chat, we can start sharing some things in the chat of things like the Kent State. The Kent State is developing, they do have a minor now in UXT, undergraduate. Thank you. At least it's a minor, not a major. Thank you. And I've already seen in the chat, a lot of folks here are career changers, right? You have your first career, could be in marketing, it could be in technology, it could be in absolutely anything. And then you can start building up your user experience skills. Some people do like a big career change, and they just go like, I don't want to be, I don't want to be in paralegal. I tried paralegal, I didn't like it, so I'm doing something completely different. But other folks would be like, hey, I started down this path as being in the law profession, but I got really good at tech. And so then they start picking up user experience skills, and then they would be a great candidate to be on a user experience team for a company that makes software for lawyers, for example, right? Because they would have both the subject matter expertise and the user experience skills. So there's lots of different career changing paths. And again, we can talk about that some more in the Q&A with some specific examples. If you're thinking more of like, well, what do I like to do during my normal, as a normal human being, here, this column of interest here are some different things that, like, if you like to just do this in your spare time, you might be a good user experience person. So for example, if you find yourself like being an artist, interested in art classes, and in the physical world, you might be drawing paintings and posters, but here in the digital world, you would just find yourself making screens and animations and so on. And maybe you could be a good visual designer on a user experience team. I know some people that are, just manic about rearranging the kitchen so that the flow is good while you're cooking, because when I'm making fried rice, I want everything to be in a certain order, and I don't want to have any wasted steps and so on. And so if that's someone like you, that you just like to organize things, you'd be a great information architect, right? Likewise, there's folks that, again, maybe biology is your favorite thing, but you don't really feel like having a career in biology, but you're really good at thinking scientifically, coming up with experiments, right? You could be a usability tester in the user experience world. So again, think of some of these other interests, and we can have some more discussions around, somebody here is probably, taken the writer path to user experience, and other folks have taken the builder path. So we can talk about some of those too. One thing that you'll find is we have is important to understand the difference between generalists and specialists. So we have some of the smaller companies tend to have, they create a role, a job description that like we need somebody that can do everything, right? We need you to make the graphics. We need you to design the graphics. We need to create the graphics. You have to be good at everything. And we even want you to write the code to implement the graphics, right? So in general, smaller companies want a generalist that can do lots of different things. And so there's a role for that one. And some people love that, right? Some people love doing lots of different things. Other companies have things like a product team where they'll have a UX UI specialist on the team working with software engineers, but that person really is just doing lots and lots of things as well, right? So like they might do the user research and they might do the design, right? They might do their own usability testing, right? With larger organizations, though, they've got separate teams and even departments, right? So you could join a user research team, and on that team, there could be 5 or 6 other user researchers that you could work together on. And you might even specialize. I've talked to some people like, I'm on the user research team and I focus on surveys, and this other person focuses on ethnography, right? The survey guru will do ethnography and usability testing, but that's, they dive deeper in it and have even more specialists. So again, in the video game theme, right, it's a beat cop versus a vice cop, right? Are you just a general purpose law enforcement, or are you just focused on specific things? And again, your career could span this. You might start as a generalist to become a specialist, or the reverse. In general, people start as a generalist, I would say, but we can have some people share some stories on their career path through being a generalist and a specialist. Since we're getting close. So just how do you get started in a career? I'll share some of my tips and tricks or things that I recommend. Other people here won't agree with me. So we can have a discussion around that. First of all, right, there's a reason that we had these 4 different groups work together to organize this session, because that, to me, in my opinion, is the best place for you to get started on your career, is find a local group and hang out with local people. Nowadays, you have to hang out with them on Zoom. You can't actually go to a bar and have a beer with them, but over time, you'll get a chance to. And again, if you want to do something, Cleveland, the Cleveland UXPA chapter is doing World Usability Day in November, a chance to get a whole bunch of training on a whole day. So I recommend joining some local groups and becoming that. If you want to read some books, I can definitely recommend Rosenfeld Media, because it's a book publisher that was created by user experience experts. And so it's UX people writing books for UX people, right? If you like tech stuff, O'Reilly has good books. And if you want to invest in more expensive textbooks, Morgan Kaufman is very good. And I think there's this service in Ohio called Libby where you can actually like go to the library and get these books for free, right? So use as many of those resources as you can. But there's a lot of things that we have to learn through books. There's other things that we learn through hands-on. There's some magazines that we can talk about. A lot of folks like, Keith, what's your favorite podcast? It's like, there's too many, I can't choose. But some other folks here might want to recommend some certain podcasts. I won't. One thing to be on the lookout, though, is user experience is a very popular term. So if you go to the medium.com website, there's like 10 articles a day published on user experience. Some of them are very good. Some of them are iffy. And I have to say, like that person, please don't listen to that person. I'm sorry, right? Because I'm happy that they're publishing it. So, but we can also talk about, like, again, how to filter out through, what's good information and what may not be useful information for you. I don't have any experience with boot camps. I know other people do. I think some boot camps look awesome, and other boot camps, to be honest, look like they're like way over promising. That it's like, yeah, pay us a lot of money, and in 3 months we guarantee you a job. Okay, that sounds shady to me in any business, let alone in user experience. But in the end, it's going to be a combination of learning on your own and continuing education and some formal education. So that's in general. So let's get to the Q&A session, just a little bit, 5 minutes over. So thanks everybody for sticking through this far. If you want to type your questions into the chat, you can, but I think it'd be much better if we, open people up and let them ask their question live. And this is for some of the practitioners that are on the call. We're going to be relying on you to answer some questions as well, right? Because people may have specific questions about specific companies that we work for, or specific situations of career paths or interests that we covered. So what sort of questions, what sort of discussion do you guys want to do you all want to have?
We could start first with the content. Does anybody have any questions on what we presented? Anything came to mind as we were going through it?
Hi, I'm Cecilia. I'm
Hi.
very new to the US. I'm Australian, hence the weird accent. Is this an area where there's a need? Is there a lack of people wanting to do user experience?
That's a great question. The field has been rapidly growing, and I would say yes, like the skills are very much in demand. Like it may fluctuate a bit within an industry or within a certain area of the world or the country, but when you look at it in general, yes, it's a very fast growing field, and there is definitely a need. It's a pretty competitive job market right now. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to add anything to that.
Looks like Joshua has his hand up.
Yeah, I would piggyback on what you said, Christine, and say there's been increasing understanding of the power of design broadly defined. Larger companies have certainly seen, some outsized returns on investment that they put into all aspects of design, whether it's research or interaction design or visual design. So this has created additional demand for people who can do that. Mm-hmm. Also, as Christine said, the field has been really hot for a while. Now is a great time to be getting into it and to be looking for a job. No one can wave a magic wand and make a job appear, but these are skills that are extremely valuable now.
Thank you.
It looks like we have a question in the chat from Kimmy. Is it still common for companies to do whiteboard interviews where you run through a UX design example? Does anybody want to take that?
I can answer that one. Yeah, it really depends on the company. I guess it depends on also where you are in your career. Obviously, if you're new to this, you're going to probably be subjected to doing the whiteboard interviews where you're drawing out scenarios and trying to kind of speculate on what kind of decisions you should make. But as a pushback, you should always say, well, I obviously don't have information about this. I haven't tested with anybody. I haven't, we haven't run any type of prototyping through, so I can't say that this is the best solution for the situation. But if I had any kind of data and this was the data, this is what I could assume that we could try to improve the user experience. And anybody who doesn't know what whiteboarding session is basically you're given a scenario of an app or a website or something like that, and you're asked to do a specific task, like, okay, how would you navigate through a payment processing page or something like that? So you would have to kind of think through how that would work, not only from step-by-step guide, but also like what the interface would kind of look like. So some companies still do this. Other companies just take a look at your portfolio and the story you're telling there, and we'll do it that way. They'll just go that route. So if they can, I say, if you have a good portfolio and you really explain your process, and not only like this was the before design, this was the after, you're telling the whole story of, oh, we did this research, we talked to these type of people, these were the personas that we used, this was the wireframing we did, we tested this prototype, and then we put it live, and then we iterated on that, and just telling the story of how you improved a product or service in a story method. If that's how your portfolio is kind of laid out, generally they don't really need to see you do a walkthrough on a whiteboard session. But again, it depends on the company. It's just like at any other position in a tech where they might require you to do some kind of test or to prove that you are skilled in this field.
Thank you. If it's here, let me put my hand down. My name is Jenny. I'm a former resident of Cincinnati, Ohio. Proud to say that I spent a great number of wonderful years there in basically digital marketing, doing all the things we're talking about today. I've been working as a public librarian at the New York Public Library for the past 5 years and doing great work there. But, I haven't lost the fire for that natural tendency to look for design in everything that I do and perceive. So I wanted to say hi. I wanted to reconnect with maybe one or two familiar faces I even remember from my wonderful time there. I miss it so much. But I wanted to also recommend 2 resources. One being when you're working on your portfolio, if you're anything like me and you've been like, well, I can mock something up, but what do I mock up? I can't think of anything. I need to be given a project. It's always great to bounce ideas off our colleagues, which is one reason I love to connect so much. But there's a tool called sharpen.design that's free. I think they also try to kind of upsell you some things, but it's just an idea generator. Like if I were to hit new challenge, it'll tell me design an Internet of Things interface for a grocery subscription box, or design a holographic UI for a pizza shop in Brooklyn, something like that. The other one, if you're looking for organizations to get some experience with, and obviously we'd all like to be paid, especially if we're paying for boot camps. I'm teaching one myself, but which is very exciting. But this resource is called catchafire.org. And I've heard it said, and I agree, that especially if, say, you're from a marginalized group, you should not work for free for anyone who can afford it. Now, organizations like nonprofits and stuff who really need this, who are doing great work and cannot afford that line item in their budget, and you do need to build your portfolio. Catch a Fire is a great organization I've used in the past to build my portfolio in various areas of content and product design. So that's all I had to say. I'm sorry that was so long, but this has been a wonderful workshop already. Thanks for connecting.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I had a question about the pathways into UX design. Right now, I'm a student at University of Cincinnati Blue Ash. I'm taking a design degree, but it's only a 2-year degree in electronic media. And I'm also taking a boot camp for New York University, and it's like UX design, and it's talking about designing for VR and AR for future interaction designs. And I also work for a startup part-time right now, and I'm trying to get an internship like next year when I graduate. But my main question is just like, how do you think a 2-year design degree, do I need more than just that, or would that look good on, my future and stuff? Like from my
perspective as a hiring manager, I look for some experience and portfolio, like was mentioned earlier. So the fact that you've worked for a startup, the more you can kind of get some like internships or co-ops, and or like work for organizations like Jenny was just mentioning to build your portfolio. I think a 2-year degree would, I can't speak for all hiring managers or organizations, but from my perspective as a hiring manager, I think that would be sufficient if you could show other ways of like developing your design process and like having a portfolio and some job experience. And the fact that you're complementing your 2-year degree with like boot camps and other sort of training, I think is also really beneficial. Does anybody else want to weigh in for Brandon?
Yeah, I would just jump in and say that throughout your career, especially in the digital space, everything is changing. That's the one constant. So learning by doing is essential. So just having that 2-year degree is a great start, but keep building on your skill set, crafting more things for your portfolio, and pay attention to your successes and make note of them so you can reference them in future.
Cool.
Never
Right.
stop learning.
Yeah.
Always be learning. Yeah.
Right. And as it like, is it good enough for me? I'd recommend like have a couple of possible employers in mind or job things in mind, because then you can do it like your own user research to say, if I want to work at this company, do all of their job postings require a master's degree or a bachelor's degree, right?
Yeah.
So you can do a little bit of research, but even then I would say don't trust it, because even there are many, I think if you're qualified, even if it says bachelor's degree and you don't have it, I would recommend still apply for it, right? Because again, there's usually they're not hard and fast rules. Now, again, different companies differ. Some of them will. I've heard stories of some people kicking people out of the HR system because you didn't qualify early on before the UX people could talk to you. But usually once you talk to the hiring managers, they're going to be much more open because again, they're interested in good talent, not so interested in exactly your pieces of paper.
Okay. Thank you.
So what other questions do we have in the
Like
chat?
Michael has his hand
Oh,
raised.
okay.
All right, Christine, you touched on something. I was wondering if you might be able to go into some detail, especially for those that are transitioning or possibly new. How do they get past the HR system and get connected to the hiring managers that like and get into the spot where Keith was talking about? Because I know like I get connected by a ton of HR people every week, and they say, oh, send us your resume, and they never say anything about a portfolio. Red flag number one. That scares me right away. But how do you recommend getting past the HR system to talk about it? Because like I'm working with a startup, and they said, well, you can go ahead and use us in an interview environment, but you can't put it on your website. You can't put it in your portfolio. I mean, the project's still being built. So, but how would you recommend getting on LinkedIn or going through various organizations like the IXDA or the IDF and connecting directly to the hiring managers to have that conversation?
Yeah, I think well, I think you gave part of the answer. So like as Keith was recommending, joining some local meetups and being able to like network and meet people, like I think that goes a long way of like getting yourself out there and introducing yourselves to others. Also like I would recommend just like leveraging your network, like looking at who you're already connected with that may work for an organization. Like maybe they're not in user experience design, but they have that practice in their organization and can introduce you to someone, like if you know someone well, and they can help you with those introductions. I get requests like that all the time from people that are just like they wanting to learn about UX, or I get introduced like they want advice of getting to the field or something like that. So I think like just definitely building your network through various means and making those connections, because you're right, like getting in the like sending your resume in and getting in the door with HR is very different from like getting all the way to the hiring manager and making those connections too.
Can I jump in here? When you're job searching, you need to turn over every possible rock there is, one of which is going through the HR system. But we all know that it's far better to go directly to a connection at that company and avoid getting lost in the HR system to begin with. So you kind of stole the words out of my mouth. Please join our organizations. Please join UXPA or IXDA or UX Akron or any of the other great organizations who are on this call. I have my start in user experience design because of being a member of the User Experience Professionals Association. So we take that networking pretty seriously. Obviously, it's of a different nature now that we're all remote, but it is still happening. It's putting the network in networking. And then it looks like Jenny and Catherine have their hands up.
Yes, I'll be super quick. This prompted me to want to just extend some support from the East Coast virtually. And because something that I also do is through the public library, I teach a 90-minute weekly intensive workshop course on job search skills. starting with what we're talking about networking, applying, identifying opportunities, and then it's resumes, cover letters, and interviewing, like one topic per week, rotating monthly. And it's online because it started at the library and then, COVID. So I can definitely link to that in the chat. I just wanted to say, it's funny too, because it's like, do what I say, not what I do. If I'm such an expert, why do I not have a job yesterday? I did just start looking, but I'm really well versed in the HR side. I do have a certification in talent acquisition strategy, and I've done UX. I know the drill. I definitely be down to help anybody out. So yeah, I think that's all. I'll probably babble at this little session, and thanks for hearing me out.
Catherine, go ahead.
Hi. Beyond building our networks and joining the organizations, for complete career changers, people who were not developers or really in technology, for example, I was a public school teacher, how do you recommend getting started to be able to, say, do some of that freelance or volunteer work with the website for helping nonprofits to kind of start practicing and getting acquainted? Any tips for career changers in a boat like that?
I would say that from my experience, so I'm a digital marketing professional, but UX, gosh, I've been involved with UX since 2000 when I started working on websites. And you learn quickly that a good website with great design and clarity, and it's not confusing, that will help you. So if you are just, getting started, it's sort of, if you're a critical, I wouldn't say a critical thinker, but you notice things, you notice something isn't right. As an example, PetSmart, I was checking out, and this was a few years back, but they had changed their interface so that the cancel button was on the right and it was green, and the, approve the purchase button was right next to it, and it was on the left then, and it was in red. So everybody would cancel their order and have to start over. And that was a problem. So things like that, if you start noticing stuff like that, and maybe you want to take a picture of it on your phone and critique it and write up, hey, here's how I would fix this, that's a great place to get started. Because then that helps to, build out your portfolio, and then definitely chatting with all of the great groups in Ohio, going to their meetings and learning, because all of that will contribute to a great support base as well.
And so Catherine, are you currently a teacher? Are you still teaching right now?
No, I'm not teaching
Okay.
this school year.
Right. Because again, you could apply lots of these techniques as a teacher,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
you could do some of those. Do you hate teaching, or would you like to continue doing some teaching? Because again, like, we need lots of teachers of user experience. So one way
Yeah,
to get good at it is to learn it, and then you learn just enough to teach it to somebody else, and you're going to learn a whole lot more.
right. No, I love teaching. I would say I have an editor's eye and kind of the skill that Melanie was talking about as far as thinking of how users experience products and services and ways to improve that experience. So that's sort of something personally that is a strength for me. That's part of what interests me in the field.
And I wanted to jump in and say, like, I know there's a lot of teachers out there, there's a lot of librarians out there, there's a lot of writers out there. If you have great writing skills, like UX designers, particularly the design people, we need great writers. So if there's something that you're passionate about, as far as even just proofing and editing and things like that, or just making language more clear and stuff like that, that's a great specialty that you can have as a UX, team member. So just something to think about, like, figure out where your passions lie, like what you're most interested in, and then dive in and learn that way, because I think it's best to kind of focus on something and kind of expand from there. I've kind of done that too. I've gone from one thing to another, and I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. Now I'm learning this and I'm doing this, and I've really expanded my skill set, but it all comes off of what I'm passionate about. There are things I'm not passionate about in UX. I'm not passionate about interviewing people, but I want to see the interview results and whatnot. I want to see the observational results and stuff like that, because I use that with all the analytical data that I pull from websites and stuff like that. So I say I'm not good at the interviewing part, but I still want that data. So I know where my strengths lie, and I know where my passions are, and that's just where I focus.
Are there any terms specifically that I should look into? Because the writer editor thing is exact, that like copy editing, technical writing and editing is another interest of mine. But seeing how it could tie into UX, is there any specific other organization that I should look into or other resources you can think of in relation to the writer, proofer, editor kind of roles?
No, I would just say, there's a lot of QA people out there that kind of do a little bit of that too. So if you want to get into any kind of really technical stuff as far as QA, but I would just, most of the UX writers are either prior copywriters for marketing or, maybe they're just a general editor at, somewhere. So I think as long as the term that you would look for was UX writer, specifically, usually that's what they're, if a team is looking for a writer specifically or a tech writer, that's another one. So those are maybe something to look into and see, like, is the salary range and all that stuff kind of where you would want to be and whatnot. But yeah, tech writing, QA, or just in general UX writer.
Great, thank you all so much.
Yeah, I'm going through the chat to see if there's more questions there. If not, just come off of mute and ask your question live.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jermel calling from out of Cleveland here. Trained web graphic designer, but my question is, do you see a correlation or an alignment between like marketing strategy and research to UX research? And I'll mute and listen to the responses.
I'll go and say absolutely. My background is my degree's in web design, but I've worked in marketing up until right where I am right now. So a lot of that marketing experience, just knowing how digital marketing works and whatnot, and the strategy aligned with that, helped me move into conversion rate optimization, which is kind of like this little side cousin of UX in that sense. Conversion rate optimization focuses on improving your websites and your products to get the people to do the goal that you want them to do, check out or download something or whatever. So I got into CRO because I loved learning about data and pulling analytics, and from there, that's when I moved into UX. So I personally work very closely with my marketing team. So they'll come to us with an idea or something that they need built. We'll say, hey, wait a second, let's pump the brakes. Let's do some research. Let's strategize this as a team, and then let's build it. So yes, it's very much, it can very much incorporate that marketing type of analytics and data and strategy, can be incorporated into your actual like interface UX. So
yeah, to support, great comments, Shannon. To support that, a lot of digital marketing, you could dive into data that's aggregated, and user research is, more of the individual experience, but there's a lot of overlap in the tool sets that get used out there. So certainly they go together, they work well together, and, there's a lot of flexibility within the space to kind of work back and forth in those career fields.
Thank you.
So we're at 1 o'clock. I'm okay to keep on chatting. I know some folks will have to start dropping off. If you registered through Eventbrite or through the IXDA Cincinnati meetup, look for a note that will include an email or other note that will include a link to the slides in case there's some material there, links to the different organizers in case you have a hard time finding some of the organizers, and we will have the recording online as well that will be shared as part of Ohio Tech Day. So any more questions that we missed? I'm scrolling back through. I think we covered them. Any parting thoughts for anybody?
Thanks for all the great questions and interaction. We appreciate it.
Join your local organizations.
I do have one more question.
Sure, sure.
As it relates to, I was in and out of the webinar, apologize for that, but was it discussed, was customer experience discussed, or like service design?
We did not get into that. So there's lots of related areas like service design, that customer experience, employee experience, that are very related fields, and it sort of depends on the organization, right? In some organizations, all the user experience people are on customer experience teams, right? And they're part of it. I've worked with user experience folks that only deal with employees, so they're on a different team or an HR oriented team. Some user experience teams are like within IT, and they work on, in the morning they work on customer facing things, and in the afternoon they work on employee facing things, right? So you're going to get a mix of things, but definitely companies that have more mature customer experience practice are going to be more receptive to user experience things, right? Just because they're already going beyond just sell, but making sure that the customers have a good experience. We could do a 2-hour session just on customer experience and user experience and how they relate to each other, and examples of when sometimes they collide and bad things happen, and many good stories of when the world is perfect and everything is great. So
we can get Debbie Levitt to do that presentation.
Yes. So, but yeah, good question, Jermel. These are, again, these user experience jobs are, these are all emerging tech jobs. So, this year you might be called a UX person. Next year you might get, your job title might be changed to become a customer experience designer, and you just go with the flow. Don't worry about it. Right. So. Anything, hopefully folks, again, found some value in this one. Also, as being part of Ohio Tech Day, right? We made a conscious effort to do this today and not last week, because we wanted to tag along with the great things that Ohio X and other people are doing for Ohio Tech Day. We made a conscious effort to find people across the whole state to do it together, right? So, it took us an extra month to get the Akron, Cincinnati, Cleveland folks and Columbus folks all working together, but that's fine, right? So again, we're thanks for joining and being part of this great event, Ohio Tech Day, and just talking about user experience across the whole state of Ohio.
Let's take the question from Erica, who's had her hand up for a bit.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Hi. I've been studying on my own for a few months now. I'm very new to this. I've been working in totally unrelated fields. I mean, maybe like sales and service jobs, but I really wanted to get into UX, and I think the barrier for me is just the cost of getting a degree, even though I would love to do that. I see a lot, I'm on LinkedIn, and I see a lot of people who have been in the field longer, and it feels a little discouraging when you always hear, that they like kind of put down maybe like people who are just getting in through boot camps or other education. And it's like, for me, I think that, I would love to get a master's, but it's a little out of my, my budget right now. Like maybe if I got some experience in the field, I would continue my education. And I was wondering, so I'm doing the Google UX course right now, and I do enjoy it. I think, the peer grading thing is a problem, because I would like people with more experience to see my work. And I think that having a strong portfolio is very important as well. I'm not sure if there's like any advice you can give on like, is this the right way to go? Should I continue? Like I definitely want to continue with this course because I am learning things, but like I don't know if like certification is a good way to go in the future, or if I should just try to get into the field first and then continue my education.
Let's have another 2-hour
Right.
presentation.
So, yeah. Go ahead.
No one, I don't think any person will ever put anyone down for getting education. The reason that there might be some raised eyebrows about boot camps is because, as Keith said, some of them are admittedly kind of shady and seem to be in it to make a quick buck and make promises they can't fulfill. I think you always want to look at the instructors who are teaching the classes. What experience do they have? If you see something like their only experience is they went to the boot camp and then they immediately started teaching at the boot camp, that's a huge red flag. You want your instructors to have real world experience. I feel pretty good about the Google instructors, although admittedly I haven't personally vetted all of them, but there are certainly legitimate Google and LinkedIn Learning and Lynda and on and on and on courses that you can find. Interaction Design Foundation has a lot of great courses. They're not free though. But yes, get that education to whatever level you can afford. Read books, read articles. Keith tossed out the names of the big publishers, Rosenfeld Media and O'Reilly. Rosenfeld has free communities that you can join. I'll put them in the chat in a minute here. Nielsen Norman Group, nngroup.com. Huge fanboy of it right here. Tons of free stuff. They're going to try to entice you to sign up for a super, multi-$1,000 event. You never have to. Just read all their free stuff and you will be getting a great UX education. The one other thing I would say about job searching is every job listing you see that says you need X years of experience and blah, 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 that's a wish list. There's no candidate who meets all of the bullet points on that wish list. So you should apply for any job that you feel you're interested in and even remotely qualified. They will be choosing the best qualified candidate who applies, not the mythical unicorn candidate who doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'll jump in there too and say, piggybacking on, yes, the boot camp thing, it can be very deceiving. One of the ones that I know is trusted and well known in kind of the community is Michelle Ronson's Curiosity Tank. That's actually, it is I think a couple $1,000s for her course, but she does a very good deep dive and she's an experienced mentor and teacher. So she's one that's going to that's somebody you're going to want to learn from if you want like a paid educational experience there. And then there are, like we just mentioned, tons of free resources as far as the training and whatnot. But somebody I follow and I'm a fangirl of is Debbie Levitt of Delta CX. She's got a giant YouTube channel and also a Slack group that you can participate in, ask questions, and there's job postings and things like that. So but she's got a whole bunch of free YouTube videos on there. She does it for free. She does not do the paid advertising on YouTube, so she doesn't get paid to do it. She just wants to put all the knowledge out there as much as she can. She does, excuse my French here, crap on boot camps, except for Michelle Ronson's, because she has seen so many people come to her and say, well, I got screwed out of money and they told me I would get a job right and it's like, well, every college does that. Every college says you're going to get a job. Every school does that. My school did that too. And I have a bachelor's degree and they said, oh, you're going to get this much money. And I was like, no, I was making way less right out of college. So, take everything with a grain of salt. Get as much experience and education as you can. Like we said before, any practice projects that you can do and dive into, do it, fill your portfolio as much as you can. And then if you are doing like the Google course or whatever, where it is being graded by your peers, which I don't like at all, but personal opinion, but if you want somebody to review the project you're working on outside of that program, feel free to reach out to me. Anybody on this call who's been talking, we'll take a look and see, the direction you're going and give you, some good feedback based on our experience as well. So I don't think anybody here is against, nobody's gatekeeping and nobody, we want more people in industry, so we're not as overloaded. So, so we're here to help.
So much.
Whenever you need. So please feel free to contact us on LinkedIn, etc. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And again, to me, I'm going to harp on the local chapters. Again, those local groups, because those that you can actually get to meet people and, yes, somebody can contact me to be a mentor, I'm more likely to say yes if we've had lunch together, right? So again, I think it's hard. It's been hard during the pandemic, but I think as we get out of it, we can start to build our local group within Ohio a little bit more, and that makes it a little bit easier. It's still not perfect. But yeah, I think, Erica, you're going through all the right processes. You're asking all the right questions, right? It's just, again, we can't give you a straight answer because it's not like being a civil engineer, right? So,
Yeah.
or a massage
Oh.
therapist. So
I did want to add one more thing about like applying for the jobs. We had a position open for a researcher 1 level. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3. Somebody who applied that was speaking the right language and was saying all the right things. She got the job even though she had no experience actually in the field. They ended up hiring her as a level 0. So she's, the entry level position, but don't let all the numbers scare you as far as positions. Like if it's a 3, then yeah, that's probably a long shot that you're probably not going to get that job as somebody who's inexperienced. But if it's a 1, they might be able to bargain and say, okay, let's take a level 0 entry level person in instead. As long as you're speaking the language or your portfolio just shines bright in their eyes, they may take a chance on you. So don't ever be afraid to apply to something, even though you don't have that 1 to 3 years of experience.
Thanks for the encouragement.
cool. I know some people have dropped, but again, some of us are willing to hang around if you have some more questions, if you just want to vent, right? Sometimes the local groups are just a way to like, for us as practitioners, it's often get-togethers. Like, I had a really bad week. I will need to talk to somebody else who also, maybe had a good or bad week, but understands what I was trying to do that day. Because again, I can vent to my wife, but that's a little bit different. So anything else that folks want to talk about? Again, we had another question about Career Foundry. Again, like, I have no experience with Career Foundry. If you gave me about 3 or 4 hours, I could study Career Foundry and see if I saw any of those red or yellow flags, but off the top of my head, I'm just not sure, right? Maybe some other folks here have experience with Career Foundry, but I don't, so I can't say.
Hey, this is David. I was the one that made the question about Career Foundry. So I'm a mechanical engineer. I've been working in the aviation sector for more than 10 years. And since the pandemic, I saw, that I could maybe steer my career another way into design, because I've been always passionate about design. So I started little by little, taking free courses, then YouTube, then the University of Michigan certificate. I got that one. And now I just paid the Career Foundry course I just give the first deposit. So I've been going, slowly but surely into, getting to know more about this. And I was wondering what would be the next step, since I already have this a little bit of background on design and a long career. And what would be a good suggestion for me? Because next year I'm gonna move back to Columbus, Ohio, and I'm gonna be looking for work. So that's why I decided to go into the Career Foundry thing and have my portfolio, kind of ready for job hunt.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, it sounds like you're approaching it the right way. And you said your background was in like an aviation.
Yes, that's correct.
Right,
I'm
right.
a mechanical engineer and
Okay.
10 years in aviation. Yeah. So
Do you want to, because again, you could focus on try to find user experience jobs within the aviation industry, right? Because that would be one thing. I don't know that industry, so I'm not sure like what the maturity levels are, which companies would be hiring or whatever. But if you're coming back to Columbus, hopefully there's, you could zero in on Columbus aviation companies, right? And then you could just start like go through LinkedIn and find those people and just, right, hammer on getting to know those people or getting to know those companies. And they might be even having some other event that isn't about user experience, and you just start, hanging out there, right? So that's one approach. But yeah, when you move back to Columbus, there's going to be lots of jobs at Nationwide and lots of other companies and other industries as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I actually have 9 years of graphic design experience and was trying to teach myself UX UI because it's always been peppered throughout my career, but I just wanted more formal training. So that's why I did the boot camp, just so I could get more critique and better feedback on the case studies I was building. So I've since graduated and have the certificate, but as I've been applying, I'm also in a weird situation where I'm also reading resumes, trying to fill a part-timer position for my current employer. And one thing I noticed though is at least the system that we use, sometimes when people do that LinkedIn Easy Apply, the way it renders everything is kind of screwy. So I've actually made a point that if I see a job on any job board, be it LinkedIn or whatever, I'll actually go to that actual company site and then try to find that job and apply it through there. So I just wanted to see, is that good? Keep doing that? Or is that going too far?
That's what I recommend to people, right? Because yeah, be like the job is going to be listed in 10 different places. Go to the company that's offering it if you can find it, and that's going to be your safest bet, because you might eliminate 2 layers or something, right? Because sometimes there's different agencies, right? Sometimes it's more of a contract job and you don't know where the job is actually at. But yes, I recommend doing a lot of homework even before you apply for the job, right? And looking at the job description and comparing it to other ones. There's often some job descriptions that some words can give you like, something sounds a little bit weird, right? Because it's asking me to be the graphic designer and the strategist and write the code, right? And design the database kind of stuff. Is like, okay, if you can do all that, that's great, but that's probably a company that doesn't know what they need yet. So they might give you the runaround once you apply.
Yeah, and I'll also say I've even caught on that some of these companies, you got to read that language because you'll find out that they're actually recruiting and headhunting agencies. They're not like an actual placement. So I've had that experience too.
Right. So
awesome. Well, thank you.
Yes, but yeah, again, in general, that's good tips to go as much to the source as you can for like those particular jobs.
Ideally, you would want to find a contact or reach out to people at that company to say, hey, I'm interested in this career path. I'm really interested in your company, would love to find out more about, what it's like to work there, and see if you can't find somebody that would be willing to hand walk your resume at a later point, before you've actually applied to the company. Get your resume in the hands of the hiring manager. Then you pop up in their application system as well. But somebody has already done a handoff, because then that's helpful for you to make it to the top of the pile as opposed to being lost in the layers somewhere.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And this is kind of to piggyback off that. Just question, I guess, for the group. I've heard 2 schools of thought, and I've actually applied that. But I've heard some people say, do it. That's the way our company loves to operate. But then I've heard other companies be like, don't do that. We're actually going to ignore you. We get hounded. So it's like, I agree. And I see the why both angles are good, but it's kind of like hard, in this position to figure out, is this a company that will respond well to that or not?
Yeah, I would say very large companies often have really structured processes. And yeah, you may run into, well, you gotta do it our way. But the small business sector, entrepreneurial startups and stuff, that's who's hiring rapidly, and that's where a lot of job growth and creation is. So that's where it's that personal connection might be a good aid to have.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. You will hit some roadblocks of like, you're just wasting your time contacting me, because even if I loved you, you have to make it through 3 other gates before I can hire you. So, and yeah, I think that's more trial by error to figure out like, these 3 companies, were all, don't go through the back door. These other companies, the back door's wide open and much better way to go.
I could say I'm at one of those companies where, everybody has to apply through the website and respond to the official, job post. However, I would also say that it never hurts to establish connections with people doing what you would like to do inside of the company if you can, because they can help tell you sort of what more specifically what it's about, the types of projects you might be working on, and maybe even give you some pointers in terms of the interview process as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. That's the end of my questions. That was very helpful.
"20 minutes over. Who wants to keep partying?" So I think we're ready to wrap up. Is
Yep.
one last call for a question or a comment?
Thank you, everyone, really,
Okay.
for this. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you all. I know that you all have very busy schedules, and to have everyone, to help us, the ones that are starting out, I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, because again, we weren't sure if anybody was going to show up. So
Yeah, no, this was
It
great.
was a great attendance. Thank you for coming.
We
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yep. All right, well, we will, I think Keith mentioned we could send out the slides to the invite list or those who attended the meeting. And I can also provide the video link to get that in there as well. All right, well, thanks so much, everyone. It was a great event. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.